I'm Jason Rzucidlo, reporting outside the Detroit Athletic Club for a meeting of the Automotive Press Association. Stay tuned for remarks from NADA Chairman Mark Scarpelli, who discussed the unintended consequences of certain manufacturer incentive programs.
Well, today I'm continuing that conversation about good intentions versus unintended consequences. But I need to direct it towards a different audience. And this one comes much closer than home, our OEM partners. The specific area of manufacturer good intentions that I'd like to discuss in greater detail is one that I believe carries the greatest potential for unintended negative consequences. And quite honestly, because these unintended consequences might not be fully understood, but they are very, very real and potentially very damaging. And this is the ongoing proliferation of market strategies such as indiscriminate price coupons and unfair stair-step incentive programs. Although the industry is coming off a very good month, everybody here knows that it's likely still in the midst of a lengthier sales plateau. So it's critical for dealers to be working with their manufacturer partners, arm in arm, to figure out how to provide customers with the vehicles that they want at the prices that they can afford. That instills confidence in the sales and service process. You've heard me talk about unfair stair-step incentives before, and my mantra has not changed. According to Cox Automotive, buyers who identify their dealer as promoting transparent pricing reported significantly higher dealer satisfaction scores, 71 versus 53%, than those who said their dealership was not promoting transparent pricing. Notice I said transparent pricing and not necessarily lowest pricing. Today's customers just want to be treated fairly. They've gotten over the mental hurdle of what a vehicle costs by the time that they've gotten to the car dealership. And according to that same Cox research, new vehicle purchasers spend 7 hours researching their purchase online out of a total of 13+ hours shopping. And 74% of today's vehicle buyers ended up purchasing the vehicle that they selected online when they arrived at the car dealership. And thanks to the internet, customers generally know what they're going to pay. So in a world where customers rightfully expect fairness and transparency in price, why do so many manufacturers still deploy unfair marketing strategies that produce huge discrepancies in price between various customers? Discrepancies that aren't transparent and can't be explained rationally, and run afoul of everything that customers really care about. I've said this many times before, that these programs are trust killers. But today, I'm going to put them in much starker terms. Any dealer who has had to work with these programs can tell you that these programs are not just trust killers, they're brand killers as well. Not being able to offer two customers the same price on an exact same vehicle just because they came into the dealership on different days of the month destroys consumer confidence. Every dealer knows this, but NADA wanted to quantify it. So over the summer, NADA brought a respected firm, an economic firm called the Analysis Group, to take a look at it for independent examination of what the use of stair-step incentive programs accomplish, both good and bad, in our marketplace. The results were pretty eye-opening. Let's take a step back for a moment and consider, as the Analysis Group did, what these programs were intended to do. It's pretty straightforward. Drive sales by lowering prices. But in reality, these programs have severe unintended consequences, which are leading to severe unintended consequences for manufacturers, and none of them are positive. Let's start with price. And the biggest problem here might be the most obvious one as well. While prices come down for some consumers, they certainly do not come down for all consumers. And what that does is create a huge discrepancy in prices for every customer. And these discrepancies aren't transparent to customers because they are manufactured to dealer. Consumers simply don't see them. But let me tell you what consumers do see. Well, for shoppers of brands that use stair-step incentive programs, they see large discrepancies in price for the same or similar equipped vehicles across dealers, or worse, at the same dealers at different points in the month. Or even still worse, a discount applied to a vehicle that they don't want, but that cannot be applied to a vehicle that they do want. So consumers see wild discrepancy in price fluctuations, and two, discrepancies that are not transparent and can't be explained by pointing out meaningful differences in the product itself. That lack of consistency, transparency, explanation is leading directly to a lack of trust, and a lack of trust in both the individual dealer and every dealer who also carries that make. And when you have a lack of trust in every brand dealer, guess what? You have a lack of trust in the brand itself. And that lack of trust in the brand leads directly to a lack of loyalty to that brand. The analysis group looked at reams of actual sales, customer data, including J.D. Power PIN data, and consumer satisfaction surveys. And it combined it with their expertise and a host of economic information to assess the dynamic and how it's affecting manufacturers themselves. And they concluded that over time, the consumer's lack of loyalty to the brand would lead to less consumer demand for that brand. Yes, that's right, less demand for that automaker's vehicles in general. Let's pause for a second and consider more closely what that really means. To start, you have a program designed to increase sales volume, but you achieve higher volume only by lowering prices. So you aren't creating demand, you're just dropping to a lower point on the demand curve. But because you've done so in a way that erodes desire for your brand, you've actually created less demand. You've created a new, lower demand. And on a new, lower demand curve, you only have two choices. You can sell fewer vehicles, or you can further lower prices just to be able to sell the same amount you would have originally had. You know what they call that? That's a downward spiral. Actually, the analysis group has a slightly different name for it. They call it a death spiral. And I'm not going to go through the entire report here with you today, because we have decided to share it with the manufacturers first, our partners. We believe it's just that important. And we want to make sure that we have constructive conversations with them about where it can go from here. But I will share a few quotes with you today that I feel summarize it very well. Quote, stair-step programs can increase sales volume in the short run while simultaneously decreasing demand. However, an increase in sales due to an aggressive stair-step program should not be confused with an increase in either consumer demand or the value of the manufacturer's brand. In fact, manufacturers who use stair-step programs aggressively risk damaging the brand in the long run and entering a death spiral of declining demand that eventually no amount of discounting can profitably overcome, end quote. We will be sharing these findings as well as further from the analysis group that have not gotten in here today, including data on what happens to residual values, used car prices, and consumer satisfaction among brands that use stair-step incentive programs compared to the brands that do not, with all our manufacturer partners as we complete the latest round of dealer attitude survey meetings later this month. It's my sincere hope that this analysis and our ongoing conversations are truly constructive in nature. America's dealers, America's manufacturers have the same goal, selling our inventories in large volumes at competitive prices. We believe that that goal should be achieved in the right way, meaning in a way that enhances the customer experience and maintains the integrity of the brand. As troubled as I am about these stair-step incentive programs, I'm also concerned about what I'll refer to as factory creep, or other attempts to exert OEM control over dealership operations. I've traveled all over the country this year and have met with hundreds, literally hundreds of automobile dealers. I've had countless conversations, meetings, seminars with dealers, dealership managers in all shapes, sizes, locations, brands, and all kinds of customers. But to one degree or another, they have all expressed concerns with increasing attempts by their manufacturer partners to run their dealerships. And this is happening throughout increased deployment of factory programs that permeate beyond sales into the service departments and parts departments, and programs that pay incentives for costly but not necessarily needed facility upgrades. The specific concern I have is that, at the end of the day, all of these programs are really doing is eroding that entrepreneurial spirit. And so much of the decision-making about what it takes to run a modern-day automobile dealership successfully. And it's time to ask an honest question. As an industry, do we really want to do that? Do we really want de facto factory stores? Do we really want to have stores run not by local business people who know their customers and care about their communities, but instead by essentially corporate managers who are just dispatched by the regional outlet store and who have none of their own skin in the game? Because the best part of being an entrepreneur is that I'm not looking for a handout. Not to be too blunt about it, but I want to be profitable because I sell and service a lot of vehicles for a lot of valued customers. I don't want to be profitable just because I'm getting the most incentive payments from my manufacturer. I fear that we're getting away from that, and so do hundreds of dealers who I've spoken to. But before we get too much further down this road, I want us to consider again some of the unintended consequences of further factory control. Selling and servicing cars and trucks in this country takes a lot of people, 1.1 million to be exact. What's better? 1.1 million employees working for at most 30 companies, maybe headquartered in 3 or 4 cities around the country, or 1.1 million people employed by about 16,500 local businesses spread throughout this great country of ours. Let me ask that question a different way. When a natural disaster strikes a given area, who would you rather have on the ground lending a hand? Corporate managers or local business people who have lived, worked, and raised their families in those communities for years, sometimes generations? I know who I'd rather have.